Right now, millions are building the Internet of Value. But the best version of this inevitable future isn't possible unless the data that fuels it can be exchanged securely and with confidence. This is a critical moment in defining our shared future. That's why nChain offers the tools to protect the data we'll need to build that future. The Internet of Value works because we do. Join us in securing the tomorrow we all share. nChain. Data without question.
Okay, so this is really simple. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. It's not as complex as people make out. It's a ledger. It records things. It should scale. It should be cheap. There's a reason for this. Because most of the world's population can't afford things when they're expensive. We don't need solutions to help the rich do banking. Really. We've had those for a long time. We need solutions to help people who aren't included in the global economy. We need a way of making machines talk to machines cheaply so that we can actually start implementing these globally. IoT is going to be taking off. And we don't want a series of walled gardens owned by a few large corporations. We want interoperable systems. When I was young, the internet had something called interop. And all the networks would come together to make machines so that machines could talk to machines. Because then, people could talk to people. And this aspect of everything here is critical. So we're going to discuss a few topics. We're going to discuss Bitcoin, what it really is, security, IPv6, and even how it's going to change across the global internet of the future. We're going to have how we can contract and what that means. Contracts are promises between people. This is a key that people think doesn't seem to matter, that machines can contract. Machines can't contract. People do. We can have machines agree what people want after people set conditions. So, peer-to-peer, very simple concept. When I started and launched Bitcoin back in 2009, the key aspect was IP to IP. Alice goes to Bob, exchanges a transaction, does a negotiation. Think about it for a moment. The whole aspect of negotiating with people and trade means making agreements, coming to agreements with other people. This is something that the Silicon Valley crowd wants to take out because it's about control. It's about advertising. It's about a model of the internet not based on small micropayments, but walled gardens, because they're deadly fearful of change, because they have control. The 80% of advertising is controlled by a small group of companies. Facebook, Twitter, and a few others. Generally one's suing me at the moment. It's really funny that the ones suing me are the ones who control the advertising model. The ones you would think would best be suited for direct IP to IP communications at fractions of a cent. With payment channels, we can have transaction costs of under 100 billionth of a cent per communication. That can settle at 100th of a cent a time. So when we're creating these systems, we're making something that enables proper peer-to-peer, but also machine-to-machine directly. We're making sensitive information exchanged directly. We might have highly encrypted data stored online, but rather than communicating via servers, when people communicate directly, the level of security goes up. That middleman, the email server, the FTP server, the web server, the storage cloud, those systems are the vulnerabilities in our networks. IPv6 enables direct connectivity. It means rather than having a large data center sitting in the US controlling everything, we can start going back to the original model of the internet. Peer distribution. Peer distribution means people. This is a simple model. We can also have identity. This does not mean that we have our identity shared to the world so everyone can see. It means we can have pseudonyms that link and prove. If I buy a television, I go out there to Amazon, I'm not going to be secretly going to maybe Central Park, waiting near the third bin on the left for some random courier to drop me a television so that no one knows who I am. There are certain other things that happens for, but it's certainly not televisions. Last time I got a Samsung phone. I didn't not give them my identity because I don't want Samsung to know who I am, and then put in my email address and all the rest so that I set it up. No, what I want is I want to be able to communicate with only the people I want to communicate with. Only those I want to exchange information should know. That's what it's about. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about very low-cost items that change and revolutionize how we're doing everything. Years ago, I started talking about things that people thought were crazy. I talked about disposable communication tablets. Right now, you can get tablets and smartphones for under $20 US. That's getting cheaper. Milk, Coke, etc. Items that have not only RFID tags, but other things that are putting everything online. So that when you have waste, it can be tracked. So that someone can pick up a can and earn 2 cents. So that someone can now monitor where their milk came from, find out what the expiration date is, whether the transportation was adequate. Did that product go in a truck that was refrigerated? Monitoring everything if you want to. None of that ruins privacy. If I want to be able to trace a source of meat from end to end, so that in the future, if something like the mad cow incident in Britain happens, rather than killing practically every cow in the country, I can monitor the individual farms and pick and choose and have a surgical response, saving millions of farmers millions of pounds. We can do that. So to do this, we need direct communications, and the only way to do that is IPv6. IPv4 isn't going to work. It isn't going to allow all of us to communicate. It isn't going to support mobile IP. It will never do it because it's not going to scale. And this is the critical aspect of all of this. How do we scale? Bitcoin always scaled. Bitcoin doesn't just scale to hundreds of thousands of transactions a second. The theoretical limit of Bitcoin would be about 2 to the 129 transactions a block. Even that could be extended in certain ways a little bit. But the whole point there is, at that point, who cares? I won't be around when we get to that. My great-great-great-grandchildren's great-great-great-grandchildren won't be. Not even with exponential growth. So the real issue here is, how do we scale? And this is really what we're going to do. We're going to scale up something, and that's how we get privacy. If each of us has a pseudonym, but is traceable, it's a different model. Privacy now works because we have so much information that no one can track it. No one can find out random stuff just because the NSA wants to. They can target people. That's a different thing. If you are a criminal, they can follow back the hard way, which is that guy they get a deal with, and he gives in that guy, and they prove along the chain. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be the NSA or GCHQ watching everything we do. It should be just targeted, selected things that are provable for why. So, simplified payment verification should be a critical aspect of how any blockchain works. You don't scale by sending a transaction to the internet, bouncing around a mesh of servers, and trying to find it on the other end. There's a reason that doesn't scale. If I hand someone else a transaction directly, I don't need to go searching for it. They don't need to go searching for it. If I go up to someone in a store and pay them, that scales because I've just handed them a transaction directly. That's why peer-to-peer scales. That's why BTC, Ethereum, etc. are not peer-to-peer. They have a mesh-like server network. It's a horrible design. What you end up doing is I send a transaction to the network, and then I have to search the network to find my transaction. The larger the system gets, the slower it gets, the harder it is. Doesn't sound too efficient. Conversely, what I'm doing with a peer-to-peer network is I'm talking directly to the other person. I'm handing them a transaction, and I'm registering it on the network. I have proof that it is a first, that it hasn't been double spent. And the thing is, I have a key value database that is indexed by hashes, cryptographic hashes, because there's no collisions. So I can look up very quickly a table of, has this been seen before? Instant, fast. That's the whole point of a hash of a transaction. I can now just scroll down from the miners, has this been seen? I can now have an SPV Merkle proof and go, validate. Not because the miners say it's okay, because I checked it. And not because I checked every transaction on Earth. I don't care what the rest of you do. Honestly don't. Peer-to-peer means my communication. I care about mine. Do I care about yours? Well, if you're paying me, yes, I want to check that it's valid. But if you're paying someone over on the other side of the room there, I couldn't care less. I don't really want to know whether you spend more money than me on coffee every month. I don't want to care whether you go out there and you buy Nike shoes and you have them customed. I don't want to care that you're sponsoring a child. Not my issue. What I do care about is my transaction going through? Are you receiving it? Am I getting my goods? Am I transacting properly? And this is what SPV does. So I don't care what the rest of you do, and you don't care what I do, and you can't trace my transactions, so we're private. So IP to IP allows direct connectivity. It allows us to communicate instantly. And I've talked before about CGA++ and mobile IP, and we can integrate the very methodology to instantly communicate directly. I can negotiate IP addresses based on my keys. So I can have a master key that now links and creates subkeys. So my IP addresses are linked to my identity, but equally you have no idea what they are. But someone that I'm communicating with, someone who exchanges information with me, does. So that means I can have a key and exchange it with you. And using certain magic in Diffie-Hellman,